Hi, welcome. My name is Michelle Rich, and I am Community Impact Officer of Income at United Way of Central Iowa. I will be moderating our second wealth breakout. So you are participating in the wealth breakout this afternoon, part of the 8th Annual Inclusion Summit, co-hosted by the Greater Des Moines Partnership and United Way of Central Iowa. Thank you all for your interest in this topic. A few notes before we go on. When we talk about wealth, we mean income and asset building. So we'll be talking about both here today. And then I wanted to note that while we won't be talking about it specifically today, we do consider Black business, self-employed business, a viable and legitimate source of income for some people. So we won't be talking about it today, but I can't stress enough that it's important to invest in employees and those that have a great idea and want to go on to business for themselves. So I want first to introduce our panelists. Thank you to these 3 amazing women that have joined me here today. I'll go alphabetically. Terry, let's have you start first. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Terry Caldwell-Johnson, CEO in the Oak Ridge neighborhood, and also today wearing my chair of the Directors Council hat as well. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Terry. And Terry will be kicking us off with some level setting data from the One Economy Action Plan, and also talking about some of the strategies she's used as an employer to support employees, especially those that might be entry level. Vicki, please.
Hi, I'm Vicki Comagis. I'm a business advisor for Central Iowa Works. I retired last January from Catch Des Moines Bureau. So been, before I left, was doing some community engagement and working and developing job opportunities within the hotel industry, hospitality industry.
Thanks, Vicki. And Vicki has joined us here today to talk about some of the work she's been doing with small business around the quality job framework, and we'll share that here shortly. Thanks, Vicki. And Sunita, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Sunita Mangradacher. I'm the operations director for Central Iowa Works at United Way of Central Iowa. We're the workforce intermediary arm of United Way. And I lead our retail work and the project that Vicki is working on. We call it the PCV project, but it's our Good Jobs, Good Business project.
Thanks, Sunita. And I have the pleasure of calling Sunita my colleague at United Way of Central Iowa, and she's our resident expert on the quality jobs framework. So she'll be sharing, so she's humble, but she'll be sharing that, kicking us off when our questions are asked. Thank you for, like I said, your interest in this topic. We wanted to level set first with some data. As you saw in the description, there's about a $30,000 a year gap between African American median income and that of Polk County. And so all of the strategies we'll be talking about today is an effort to decrease that disparity and also hopefully build wealth among African Americans and other people of color. So first, I want to turn it over to Terry, where she's going to share some of that level set data for us so we can recognize and start off with some context around this issue. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm going to share my screen so that we can look at this data. And this is a project. One Economy is an initiative that I've been working on with the Directors Council for about 7 years. 6 of those years have been funded by the Northwest Area Foundation, but I should also mention we have local funders, including United Way, the Community Foundation, Principal, Salmon's Financial, just any number of folks have really stepped up to help support this work. Des Moines is part of a 5-city initiative that's focused in this area with a laser focus on the African American community and ways that we begin to address the racial wealth divide. We're involved in this work with Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, and we call ourselves a community of practice. And while we have attempted to approach these issues in a way that is really specific to our municipality, our location, the beauty of the work is that we're able to share our findings, share our best practice, share our research in a way that allows us to benefit from what's happening in the other 5 cities. The work that we have chosen to start with here in Des Moines was really sort of based on qualitative and quantitative research. And when Michelle was at the State Public Policy Group, she was part of the research team that helped us to do our 2017 qualitative and quantitative research. And we have since updated that research with a 2020 report that came out in June of this year. So to really help put into context who Black Polk County is, statewide, we comprise about 4% of our total statewide population. In Polk County, African Americans or individuals of African descent are about 7.1%. And Des Moines is the city that has the highest proportion of African Americans or individuals of African descent, with about 11%. But as you can see, we also see the rest of our community becoming more and more diverse when you look at about 4.6% of the population in West Des Moines being individuals of African descent, about 2.8% in Johnston, 1.6% in Ankeny, and 1.2% in Waukee. So each and every day, we are seeing greater and greater diversity throughout Polk County and into our suburbs. So let's talk a little bit about the One Economy data indicators and findings. The work is really centered on 5 key areas: financial inclusion, employment, education, health, and housing. And I'll put a link in the chat when I'm finished that links you to the TDC website, where you can access both the 2017 and 2020 reports. But what our 2017 data very quickly revealed to us is that right here in Des Moines, we have our own tale of 2 cities. While in 2016, we were the 11th best place to live in the United States, in that same year, we were the 3rd worst city for African Americans. We were the #2 best city to find a job, but in 2015, the unemployment rate for African Americans was over double of that for the rest of Polk County at about 16.7%. We're the #1 location for millennial home buyers, but for the period 2010 to 2014, only 1.4% of all home mortgages were made to individuals of African descent. And then finally, we were the #5 best city for retirement, but in that same year, only 11% of Black households had any retirement income to speak of. So when we talk about this notion of asset building and wealth creation, these 2 data points become critically important. The 2 greatest ways to transfer wealth from one generation to another is through property or home ownership, and through other assets that typically are retirement, CDs, or other forms of income. So as you can see, individuals of color are lacking. Let's fast forward to 2020 to see if we made any progress. While we're the 3rd best affordable place to live in the United States, about 53%, nearly 54% of our Black population was a cost burden renter, which meant that of that $30,000 income, median household income for individuals of African descent, more than 30% of that amount was being paid to cover the cost of rent, which means that you really have little left to really do the other things that you need to do. Put food on the table, put clothes on your back, pay for transportation, pay for utilities. It really limits your ability to really focus on any other forms of asset building or wealth creation for your household. We were the 7th best city for living the American dream. And while our Black population unemployment rate has come down from that 16.7% in 2017 to 11.7%, we're still nearly double that of the rest of the population. And this was a pre-COVID number. And we know the disproportionate impact that COVID had on individuals of color. So I would imagine that that unemployment rate for the total population has increased, but it has also increased for the Black population at probably double that of everyone else. And we're the fourth best city for children. And while at the same time, we have a graduation rate that's pretty close, the Black population to the total population. When you look at the disaggregated data, what that will tell you is that our males of color and our Black males are graduating at about a 67–68% rate. So we've got some pretty big issues that we have to deal with there. So I'm going to talk just very quickly about a couple of our data points. For employment, we focused on labor force participation and the unemployment rate. We've already talked about the unemployment rate. Polk County overall, 10.5% for the Black population countywide, unemployment about 2.7%, and again, pre-COVID numbers. And then you look at labor force participation. Again, while we're pretty close overall in terms of labor force participation, when you factor in the number of people who are in the labor force and not employed, with those people who are not even counted in this number because they no longer consider themselves in the labor force, we can see that we have some pretty significant issues. The other thing that I want to point out here is job availability. A negative 15% in our high poverty areas, which is typically where the largest percentage of African Americans live. They're not able to live and work in the same place. But as you can see, we have a plus 9% job availability in the suburbs. But we know the issues of affordable housing, access to affordable housing, and other things are critical when we begin to think about ways that people find opportunities to not only live and work in the suburbs. And then another key finding here is having to do with education. We know about the correlation between education and educational attainment and employment. And as you can see, about 45% of the individuals in Polk County have a post-secondary degree, while about 24% of the African American population has post-secondary degrees. And then if you go over to the right side of this slide, graduate or professional degrees, over the course of the last, 12 years, 2005 to 2017, we can see that there continues to be a huge gap between those individuals in the larger population that have a professional degree or a graduate degree and those of African descent. So Michelle, I'll conclude with that and I'll turn it back to you and we can start the rest of our discussion.
Great, thank you. I think this all shows that, employment is very important. We need people to have jobs, to have some income coming in. But we also advocate through our Thriving Workforce Initiative that the job should be quality. And we're going to define that here in a moment. And the Thriving Workforce strategies that we will talk about today not only focus on businesses and ensuring that when they're creating jobs, they're of quality, or tweaking their jobs, that it's of quality, but also that people are prepared to take those jobs. And so that gets to, Terry, thank you for that. Your data, the context on education and how important that is, education and training, and labor force participation. So first off, I want to ask Sunita to define the Thriving Workforce Initiative and what the quality jobs framework is that we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Michelle. So the Thriving Workforce Initiative is an initiative that United Way started a couple years ago. With COVID, I don't know how many years, that it might be 2 years ago, but it really was, or really is, based on job quality and looking at making sure that employers are offering good jobs to the people in our community and that people are, like Michelle said, qualified to take those jobs. Our goal is really to just educate everybody, employers and job seekers, on what good jobs are, and really digging deep into what our employers are doing and how they can offer good jobs to our community, and really educating job seekers and incumbent workers on how they can access good jobs and move up the career ladder. The Thriving Workforce Initiative, we really looked at national research and local research on the different types of job quality practices and pillars. The PCV project that Vicki is working on has 6 pillars. We looked at those and some other research and really narrowed those down. The Thriving Workforce Initiative uses the first one that everybody always thinks of when you talk about a quality job is compensation, so pay. So pay is very important to the people that we work with, but it's also one of those things that when we ask employees what's important to them, it's not always the top thing that they say. So pay is one, scheduling is another. It's important for people to have stable scheduling so that they can plan their lives. They can do different things, childcare, other jobs, things like that. So stable scheduling is important. I also talk about how flexible scheduling is important as well. So there are some people that just need, for a variety of reasons, where maybe like another job, maybe have multiple jobs, that they need a flexible schedule and can work these hours one day and those hours the next. And so finding the right employer that can offer that for that individual. And then how far out they make their schedules. People sometimes or often would like to know at least a couple weeks out what their schedule is. So scheduling is important. Benefits, looking at the type of benefits. So benefits is another pillar, and looking at the types of benefits that we offer our the employees, making sure that those benefits match what the employees need. So I used transportation as an example. So healthcare is a benefit, but looking at what other things that we can offer. And when we talk about affordable housing and jobs, it's often, like Terry said, that the job is not in the same community that the person lives. And so being able to get to that job is important. So employers paying for transportation, offering that as a benefit, what often helps put more cash in the pockets of the people that we are employing and serving. So that's looking at the different types of benefits that we offer. Recruitment and training is another pillar that we look at. And so recruitment, where are we recruiting? Who are we recruiting? And then making sure that we are offering training opportunities to people to help them skill up for the positions that are open in the community. And then also helping people skill up within an organization, gain skills to move up the career ladder. And then employee engagement is an extremely important piece of job quality, the job culture, things like that. So making sure you're hearing the worker voice, bringing employees, what we can do to engage them in the actual business that we are doing. So those are all important things to the thriving workforce. We have put together guides for employers and some guides for job seekers, and trying to make sure that everybody is learning and moving along the path together in this initiative.
Thanks, Anita. And quickly, it might seem obvious to some, but why is a quality job an equity strategy?
Now I don't remember what I said in the other one, but a quality job is important to equity because we need to make sure that we are offering opportunities to people, to diverse populations, especially. I think I discussed the ability for people to move up within an organization who don't often see themselves reflected in leadership. So making sure that we're looking at our organizations and who's in our organizations. That's where we talk about recruitment. Are we recruiting from diverse populations? Are we looking outside our normal recruitment strategies to bring in diverse populations, to bring in people that are different from the leadership that's within the company, and helping them grow, offering them opportunities to grow within the organization. So those are all strategies. We have strategies within the framework that would lead to equity and inclusion of other people.
Thank you. Vicki, I want to ask you just generally, you're working with individual businesses. what are some of those small businesses doing around quality jobs? You're muted.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
In working with the small businesses, one of the things that they all have been really concerned about is compensation and the pay, and what is the average pay within Central Iowa. So they want to be fair, they want to be where they need to be, and just trying to figure that out has been a challenge for a lot of them. The other thing that has been a topic of conversation that they want to focus on is engagement, and engagement with the employees and the culture of their company. When I start with a company, one of the things that we do is start with the 86 question survey. So they can take a look at that as the manager and or the owner and see, oh, are we doing this? Are we not doing that? And then they present a similar survey to their work staff to take a look at and see what is important, because as Sunita said, in each of these pillars, there are different things that are important to different employees. And I think one of the things that I found that people were doing is relying on applicants to come in and not recruiting, not taking a look at who might be out there and who they could be working with, or, as Terry put out there, the different neighborhoods and where the business is and where the opportunities are. So that has been enlightening in working with these small businesses, is to talk about that and have them challenged to think about where they can recruit from, as opposed to just having people walk in the door. And they've been seeing some successes for that. Also, the scheduling, as Sunita said, scheduling is one of the questions that is asked on the survey, and everybody says that they do their scheduling 2 weeks out. But when you ask the employees, that's really not happening. That 2 week out isn't happening. So it's one of those things they know they should do, and they need to be working on that. The other thing that we talk about with scheduling too is operating with Slack. But it's also in the retail with some of these businesses that we're working with as well. And then the other thing that I think is really cool, everybody that I'm working with, they pick 2 or 3 of the pillars that they want to work on. And every one of them so far has picked engagement and culture of their company. So it's really important for them that the engagement piece is there and that the culture is there. But it's not just happening, they have to work on that. So when they talk about that, they have to use this toolkit to work through it, and they are doing that.
Thank you, Vicki. And there is a comment in the chat that I'd like us to consider. This poster is tired of hearing CEOs say that there aren't any qualified people of color for positions. Yet there aren't many development strategies or networking and collaboration with organizations and institutions to recruit people of color. Speak to this, and Terry or Sunita, I don't know if you can speak personally also on this topic, but what are your thoughts on this issue of that excuse?
You want to go, Terry?
Sure, I'll hop in. Well, we hear that regularly. I was just thinking about the CEO at Wells Fargo, who stepped all the way in it here a month or so ago by indicating that, there's just no talent development. It's hard to find people of color, which I think is one of the most ludicrous things I've heard a CEO say in a very long period of time. I'm a proud product of an HBCU. And HBCUs are prime for the picking. They graduate some of the best and the brightest people of color in this country. And if people have not figured out how to access talent through HBCUs, then they're totally missing the boat. I also think that it's important for us within our organizations to also create pathways for leadership development and growth and development in terms of being able to move into other roles within the organization where you are. So often, you know, we have this great tendency to feel like we have to look outside before we look inside, and really investing in the people that we have and creating opportunities for growth and development, to me, is the best way to not only create sort of a grow your own strategy, but also to really be able to promote people within your organization that not only understand your organization and corporate culture, but are also willing, ready, and able to move into those opportunities. So, you know, I'm a real big proponent of recruitment at HBCUs, but I also feel like, you know, your best bets sometimes are right there in your own backyard. And if you grow your own people and provide pathways within your own organizations for people, then you're going to recruit people, but you're going to retain them as well. So those would be the things that I would offer.
Thanks, Terry. Sunita, did you have thoughts?
I did. I mean, one of our strategies, it's not always easy to go from top down in some of these organizations. So I always say we wiggle our way in from the bottom up and work our way to the CEO to make changes. It's a, you know, grassroots on the ground effort to make changes with some of our organizations. So it's really, we're right there with you in hearing those CEO comments. We try to work specifically on the projects that I'm doing. We're trying to work with businesses here that have local leadership that can make changes here instead of like we do work with Wells Fargo, but, you know, working with an organization whose CEO doesn't sit here, and you have to go through multiple levels of red tape to get anything changed is hard, but it's still doable. But a lot of the work we do here, we make sure that we have local leadership that can make changes that we're able to implement right away.
And some of those changes have been, some large companies here in Central Iowa have taken a look at their positions and really assessed whether or not a college degree or some of their other qualifications are necessary for the position, and have right skilled or right qualification, that's not a word, but I just made it up, right qualification their positions, which I think is an equity strategy in and of itself, because the fact of the matter is that we do have a mismatch between the education of people of color and positions, but that might be because the qualifications aren't exactly right for that position, or aren't necessary all the time. So I think that is another strategy that's been done here in Central Iowa.
You know, I think to that point, Michelle, one of the things that we always, you know, put in our job descriptions and also in our postings is a certain number of degrees, a certain degree or an equivalent level of experience. And I think sometimes in order to really sort of look at candidates, we look first at the education. We don't always look at the experience. And oftentimes, many of these candidates of color will come in with great experience, but boy, if they don't meet the letter of the law, and if you can't check every box for these candidates of color, then sometimes they lose out. And sometimes their experience far exceeds people that even have degrees. So we really have to think about how we balance both of those in a way that really allows us to open the door and to be open for candidates of color, when typically we're not taking the time to do that.
And Terry, you're doing some really interesting things with your staff to support them once they come on as employees. Tell us about how you support all of your employees, whether or not they're employees of color, to be successful in your organization and to build some trust and engage them.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think we know that especially in a tight labor market, being able to not only recruit but retain is critically important. And especially for people that you've poured a lot of time into with training and development and certification and education. Those are the people that you don't, want to lose in your organizations. But the key is creating opportunities, both traditional and non-traditional, to maintain those folks in your organization. So I do think that one of the things that we've been able to do is to obviously make sure that our traditional benefits packages are as generous as they can be. So we've done a lot to move the needle on our 401k and really increasing our match in a way that allows us to use that as a way to retain our employees. We've really worked hard to keep down our employee benefits. So the portion or the copay, the employer is really assuming a larger portion of our employee benefits so that we can utilize that as a way to really sort of match, in some respects, places where salaries are lower, but the benefits is an equally important piece of an employment package. And we've also worked on creating what we call Working Solutions, which is a small dollar lending program that supports our employees in ways that they can access small dollar loans to either help offset emergency expenses that were not anticipated or expected that would or could preclude them from being able to make it to work. Flat tire, didn't have the money to, pay for a new tire, or car trouble and didn't have the money to take care of those car repairs. So this small dollar lending program has given us an opportunity to sort of level set for all employees and given them access to capital. One of the things that the One Economy report tells us is that individuals of color, especially individuals of African descent, are denied loans at a rate 2.2 times higher than the rest of the population. So if you can't get access to capital to cover those costs, we step in and we're the banker. We work with a local credit union and do payroll deductions for individuals to pay off a first loan, which is typically $500, and then a second loan, which could be up to $1,500. So it's a great way for individuals to access capital while at the same time potentially either building or repairing credit, but definitely providing opportunities for us to reinvest in our employees so we don't jeopardize the investment that we've made in them when they're not able to make it to work because they've had a situation that they couldn't control or manage.
Thank you. And I think there are some employers that say, I just don't want to get into that business. Why would we do that? And talk to us about the outcomes you've seen from it. Clearly, you talk about scaling the program, you've seen benefits to it. What are some of those real impacts?
Yeah, the real impacts are, people being able to get off that predatory lending cycle, especially if they're unbanked or underbanked, don't have access to a bank. This creates an opportunity for them to establish a banking relationship, which is one of the first steps in asset building and wealth creation. So, again, a great way to not only support our employees, but to also really create a way for them. Once that loan is paid off, it goes into a savings account for a subsequent 6-month period, which creates this habit of saving and really being able to, again, do some asset building, wealth creation, credit repair, credit building, all of those things that we know are important for people to be able to buy a home, to be able to access capital for whatever it is that they need. So we found it to be really beneficial, and through the Directors Council, we've actually scaled it. So it is a community model that we provide through the African American churches.
Yeah, I loved what Caroline Wanga said this morning about no participation trophies and really waiting to gift the actors for their equity efforts based on outcomes. So Vicki, can you talk about some of the outcomes you're seeing on a small business level? Perhaps you haven't seen them quite yet, but some of the early signs that this work is making some inroads, possibly.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's getting people to focus and to really focus in. One of the things that I have found in talking with people is that they know the importance of talking with staff one-on-one, and whether that be weekly, biweekly, or every month with a supervisor, that it's so important. But until they do that and staying on top of that, they don't know what the priorities of their staff is and how that aligns with the priorities of the business, And so people want to be engaged. They want to know their goals. They want to know what they need to do to be successful. Sometimes, with these one-on-one meetings, sometimes it's about getting to work on time. And other times it's about, okay, you've got to grow where you're at right now to get to the next step. And it's how this is a stepping stone to something bigger and better, where the person might want to go. So, just taking a look at some of those basics. Empathy is another one, to have empathy, to hear, again, what is important. And just like Sunita had said, is it the pay? Is it the benefit? Is it the flex time? But that has been a good priority for them. The other one we are seeing, as I had mentioned, is the reach out for recruiting of employees, that they are stepping back and thinking, there's so many people that come through the doors, and, with COVID, with an unemployment rate, so many people that are applying but really don't show up for interviews and that kind of thing. We've heard lots of employers talk about that. So it's really finding the right niche. What's going to make it work for you? Where are you going to find these employees? And I've been very fortunate because last year I was the chair of the Partnership Inclusion Council. So I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of really good agencies and organizations. And so I've been able to pair them up with who I think would be good to help them find good workforce and develop workforce. And that's being very successful right now.
Thank you. I just really think that you highlight the journey that a lot of people are on, but organizations go on this journey as well, where the first step is that awareness, not just of our privilege, but what kind of culture we're encouraging, or what kind of culture that exists at our business, where we're bringing in employees and we're promoting customers. And that's the first step to then taking action. So I hear that there are small businesses in our community that are doing that important work and doing that first step. But I wanted to, Vicki, go ahead.
I was going to say, and right now with COVID, it's so important because the dynamics of the family at home, or, even parents and what they're dealing with, everybody's dynamic is so different. And it's so important that supervisors or owners, managers know what's happening with their employees and where they're at in their lives right now, and how they can continue to make them thrive, help them thrive.
Certainly this morning we heard that it's important to consider each person as an individual, which I think we hear a lot of, but it sounds like businesses are really taking that to heart and utilizing empathy and really tailoring their business supports or their employee supports to individuals, or at least are on that path. So that's good to hear. I do want to take note of a question we've had, and it's around reparations specifically, but I want to open it up to you all. That $30,000 gap is huge, and it seems like a big goal to create more parity between people of color's median income in Polk County and others' income. What are some system-wide big strategies, whether that be policies or things that large to small companies can do to make inroads in this area? Reparations could be one of your solutions, but as we heard this morning, Dr. Eddie Moore doesn't think that that's going to happen. I want to open it up to you. What do you see as some of those big system level changes that need to occur to make inroads in this area.
Are you asking the panel?
Yes. Sorry.
I mean, I can start and steal Terry's thunder. I'm going to start with education. We can start making differences in the way that we offer career opportunities, career exploration opportunities to kids in our schools, and our school district and all the other school districts that I work with. We've talked about you can't start at high school. We have to, and it's even before middle school. You have to start in elementary school and start exposing kids to different opportunities, to give them the idea that they can be something else than what they see themselves as growing up to be. That's, I guess, one area where I see that we can start a systems change. We can start, we often talk about it in teacher aspect. Kids don't ever, kids of color don't see themselves as being teachers because they don't have teachers of color. And so they don't see themselves in that. So really starting young and showing them that they can be whatever they dream it to be, and having those representatives in school districts and in business and different things. So really starting education is key to changing anything that we do with our equity work.
And I want to note Marlu's suggestion that reparations might not be direct payments necessarily to individuals, but it could be removing the costs associated with education, higher education in this case. So that's an example. Thank you for that. Terry, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to offer that, reparations could be a small part of a solution, but it's not the entire solution. I mean, this is a generational thing dating back to 1619, over 400 years since the first slaves, came to this country. So to think that we're somehow going to buy our way out of this, really, quite frankly, would, bankrupt this economy. And when you think about reparations, that really is looking backwards. It's not looking forward. So, you think about future generations and you think about, ways that we level the playing field for everyone. And, I just believe that there are things that we can do with systems and policies and access that, to me, create a much stronger framework for us, from which for us to launch than, really thinking about reparations. And, I think about this thing about, the choices we make have a lot to do with the choices that we have. And, people of color are living in depressed neighborhoods. We're living in places, where we don't have access to quality school, quality housing, safe neighborhoods, quality food, you name it. And so until we have this notion of reinvesting in communities of color that create a level playing field, at least for them to think about getting to equity, then I don't know that reparations is really the answer. I think it's how we think about investing in communities of color that not only get them to a point where we can level the playing field, which then gets them to the point where we're able to launch everybody equally to the next level. So, I really think it's about ways that we invest in communities of color and ways that we lift up those communities. I'm, a strong proponent of we're only as strong as our weakest link. And until we create strong communities that allow everybody to thrive, we're really not going to thrive as a community of a whole. So I just think we really have to reinvest in our communities of color and really think about what that looks like, neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block.
And listen to what the youth said over lunch. They said equity has to be sustainable, or it is by its nature sustainable. And perhaps reparations in the typical form of direct payments to individuals might not be the most long-term sustainable solution. But I agree that there might be other ways to define reparations that are not simply direct payments to individuals. So thank you, Marlu, for opening our eyes to that. Vicki, did you have any comments about systemic changes?
Yeah, what I think about, I go back to what Terry has said and really look at the banking side of things and the equity opportunity with owning, a home. And so how do you even start with that? And you've got to start with your good jobs, and what jobs can lead you there, what jobs can lead on that path, whether it is through a course with a formal education or, thinking about other opportunities. There's just so many things that need to change outside of just the employer in order to get the equality where it needs to be.
Thank you. So to end our session before going into Q&A, I'd like each of you to take a few moments and give our participants some takeaways. So what can they do individually or within their organizations to make a difference in this area? So how can we come together as individuals or within an organization to create more parity in median income, especially, but also in the wealth gap? I'll let anybody start.
I'll start then.
Thanks, Vicki.
Okay, sure. The things that I had written down is the empathy is number one. To understand where a person is at and where they want to go, and how can you help make that become a reality, or your company make that a reality. I think the way to get that empathy and to share it is with those one-on-one meetings that we talked about, to put those as a priority and make sure that they are happening within your company. And then the other thing that aligns with that also are clear goals. And those clear goals for what they are short-term, maybe within the month, but also long-term, to get the buy-in and so people can feel a part of it and be a part of that success. And that level of success that they feel is going to be so varied based on where they're at in their career path and where they are going to. But just to talk about goals and be specific and clear is so vital and so important, and not just once a year at a performance review.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm a very big proponent of that. Get outside of just the annual performance review.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Harry, takeaway?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm going to probably echo what I said in the last session with regard to this, and that's really about this notion of ways that we really focus on education first and early education. So early childhood is a critical building block to future educational success. So ways that we not only invest in education, but start early with education, and not just, K-12, but really encouraging, postgraduate work, after you get out of high school, even if it's going to a certification program or getting on a pathway for, the trades, anything you can do to enhance your readiness for the world of work, to me, has something to do with education and increasing your skills so that you become more and more marketable. So, I'll never give up on the importance of education. I know how important it's been for me in, my pursuits. But the other thing that I mentioned earlier today was Marvin DeGier, who was on the earlier session. He and I have a summer youth employment program, and there's nothing wrong with starting kids early on this notion of career exploration, college preparation, what their futures look like. For so many brown and Black children, they do not have those same role models in their household that majority kids have. Parents who have attained a college degree, parents who are professionals, their role models are not those that we see in the corporate sector and in the C-suite every day. So really creating opportunities for those young people to visualize what their futures can be, and to really think about, what their path to success looks like through education and career exploration. So that's my number one thing. And then secondly, I think it's important for corporations to really think about this notion of recruiting at all levels, recruiting candidates of color at all levels. I just get so tired of people saying they can't find good quality candidates of color. Well, you should be looking for good quality candidates no matter what, black, white, blue, or brown. We seem to find good candidates, good quality candidates for, you know, all other sectors, but you know, this notion of not being able to find them in people of color just, you know, it eludes me. You know, I have 10 people, you know, on my senior management team, and 80% of them are people of color. They're people that I have found, people that I have grown, people that I have groomed and developed to be in the roles that they're in. So we have to be willing to invest in our people, not only bring them in, but create opportunities where we're investing in them and allowing them to grow within our own organizations. Let's not just get stuck on the fact that we can't find candidates of color. They're out there. We just have to look for them. We have to look for them just like we look for candidates from other genders or other ethnicities. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
Your soapbox is appreciated here, so no worries. And it was at a Greater Des Moines Partnership event where I heard the statistic that if you have 2 or more people of color in your candidate pool, you're exponentially more likely to hire a candidate of color. So that's a first start. But then I really hear Sunita spoke to this, and Terry, you've spoken to this, that we need to be really intentional about who we are grooming. And Vicky's talked about leadership development as well, and who we're advancing within the organization too, and making sure that there are people of color represented in the higher parts of the hierarchy. So that is well heard. Thank you. And Sunita, final words? Takeaways?
I just want to reiterate that people on these calls or in this Zoom can be the voice of people within organizations. If you see something, a person that doesn't see themselves as a leader, but you feel that they have potential, you know, helping them gain confidence to do that. If you see somebody being passed over for career opportunities, you can be their voice to be to help them, you know, move up within an organization. So just making sure that we're speaking up and speaking out, and making sure that our peers and our coworkers are getting the same opportunities that you are.
And for white people that might be we often are among just white people and in companies and other organizations, and being sure to be the voice for people of color in those environments as well, not just when they're around, but speak up for them in those places usually of power. Thank you very much for those takeaways. I'll open it up to any additional questions that our participants have. I'll give you a moment to type that in the chat if you have any questions. In the meantime, I want to thank you all for attending the 8th Annual Inclusion Summit. Your time here is very much appreciated. We recognize that this might be a first step for many in their equity journey. We hope that you continue it. We also want to thank you for the questions that you had today, posing some difficult questions and some softballs where we're able to further explain our strategies and our takeaways. So we appreciate that, and we hope, again, I'll just reiterate that we hope that you continue your equity journey beyond the Inclusion Summit. And thank you all for your time today.